All right, you guys should be able to hear me. You should be able to see me. I should be live. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart. And no, Drew, this will not just be a rewash of the last few days' videos. Thank you for your salt or whatever it is. But yes, you know, when we do our Thursday streams, we talk about what we've been talking about throughout the week, but we try to dive a little bit deeper and try and get to ideas we haven't covered yet. So there you go. But yeah, so with that in mind, the topics for tonight, or the focuses, of course, whatever you guys bring up in the chat, because this is a Q&A, that will steer the conversation elsewhere potentially. But we're really focusing on what types of announcements we could see from Tears of the Kingdom at the Nintendo Direct. So there hasn't even been a video on this yet. Sure, we've touched on the ideas, but the basic premise is to kind of focus on what Nintendo may say about Tears of the Kingdom in terms of, like, will there be a trailer? Will they announce a treehouse afterwards? Will there be a direct afterwards? Will they announce a Zelda OLED in a direct? Will it be separate? Will there even be an OLED? Will there be some sort of collector's edition? What could this collector's edition entail? You know, if there is going to be a trailer, how long will it be? Will there be a developer diary? There's all these different nuances to what could be said about Tears of the Kingdom in a potential February direct. So that's what we're kind of like focusing on tonight, trying to dissect, trying to come to some level of a conclusion, or at least just kind of giving an opinion. You know, I want to get a sense of what you guys think, and I'll sort of extrapolate upon the different things we could maybe see. So that's one part of the discussion, and the other is talking about this Metroid Dread sequel. So we're assuming it's a Metroid Dread sequel. We don't know what it is necessarily, but we do know that Yoshio Sakamoto, the Metroid creative mind behind it all, he intends to continue the series beyond Metroid Dread. Even though Metroid Dread is supposed to mark like this end of an arc, there still is a plan to go beyond the story of Metroid Dread. And Mercury Steam did a great job with Metroid Dread. Game has sold well. It's technically the best-selling Metroid game ever. And now we have this leaker that actually leaked Metroid Dread being made by Mercury Steam and the release date before any of that was announced. And now they're saying the next one is being worked on Mercury Steam, and they're targeting a 2025 release. So we're going to be talking about that, what the game could entail, different ideas like that. Yeah, I probably will go into more detail. Like, I'm kind of, it's a just spoiler. I'm planning a video next week, maybe kind of going into a big focus onto like what Metroid Dread 2 could be, right? But of course, we will touch on some of that tonight as well. Hence the speculation stream. And this stream honestly may give me some ideas, and we'll see what direction that could lead into. But let me take a little bit of water here. There's ice in there. Kieran Buckley. Prediction for the likely February Direct announcement. A sequel to ARMS. Also, Andres, you need to play Persona 5. I do need to play Persona 5 someday. It's on my to-do list. Disinferno. Metroid 6 is a big mystery box. We don't know what to expect. And that's what's exciting about it. I think that there is a follow-up coming. I think it seems like a fairly safe thing to say. When it happens, hard to say, right? Well, I mean, 2025 apparently. But, like, what the game is going to entail, to your point, they could go in a lot of different directions. But I think there's material out there to go beyond. They could delve deeper into the Galactic Federation and the issues that pertain to that. There's some politics involved, and maybe that could lead to its own thing. Then there's also the possibility of, well, the Space Pirates. I mean, the Space Pirates can still come back. They can still be a threat. Now, it doesn't seem super likely, but I would be shocked if we never hear about anything Chozo related again. It may just be more Chozo ruins, but they could bring that in. If they, I mean, maybe there's some sort of survivor to some extent of the Chozo or something, or the X Parasite that is left from with Planet ZDR. It's been a few months since I played Dread, so that's why it's taking me a while to kind of think of the details. But you know, there's different angles. One thing I do feel that is likely, though, I don't think. I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see another Metroid after Metroid 6 or in Metroid 6. But I think the idea with Metroid Dread is that Samus is Metroid now. So the meme has become a reality. So moving forward, while I still think the games will carry the Metroid name, the implication is Samus's history and how she's matured into a Metroid in a weird way. And so with that in mind, when you think about that, when you think about Samus as a Metroid, she has a lot of powers. They can build on that. So from a gameplay perspective, they can go beyond just a traditional Metroid gameplay, and they can really power Samus up, give her different gameplay options, and that could be one way they sort of start to change the direction of Metroid a little bit. I'm not saying that they go away from the Metroidvania style. I'm not saying that Samus loses her arm cannon abilities or her traditional powers, but they expand on it with things that would be sort of like, you know, thinking, okay, if Samus were to continue this trajectory of developing Metroid powers, what does that mean exactly? So going in that direction, the first thing that comes to mind is literally absorbing the life out of things around her. And she did that in Metroid Dread, but it wasn't something we can control ourselves. We didn't have it as a gameplay option. Imagine that becoming a gameplay option. And then maybe they could even pull in details from different abilities we've seen different Metroids have and evolving on that. That would be interesting to see. Now, with that in mind, like if that is kind of like the focus, if they just kind of focus more on the development of Samus as this freakish superhuman with these Metroid powers and the perhaps issues that revolve around that, like maybe the Galactic Federation, seeing how strong Samus has become, maybe they will grow a little uncomfortable of her. Especially because if you think about the history of Metroid, there have been times where Samus has made decisions that the Federation did not approve. So there have been hints and subtle details throughout the series of a little bit of a struggle between Samus and the Federation, a little bit of politics involved. And while it's never truly materialized into like the Galactic Federation being a true threat against Samus, maybe going beyond 5, 6, and beyond, they truly start to become more of a threat, especially with Samus now being the true Metroid. Because the Federation, at least once, I think secretly, maybe more, I have to kind of double check, because I know they were working, the Galactic Federation was working on Metroids in Super Metroid, and they were working on the Metroids in Metroid Fusion in secret. So I have to double check 1 and 2. She was just sent out on a mission, and then 1 she was also sent on a mission. So yeah, I think in Metroids 3 and 4, Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion, the Federation was actually like working on Metroids, and there's a little bit of an energy of that they shouldn't be kind of dealing with that, right? Like you think like Jurassic Park vibes a little bit, like in the sense that there are scientists. It's not a great fit, actually. It's probably shouldn't have brought it up, but like the basic concept is just trying to get a better handle on nature and manipulating it, and then it going awry. So that hasn't quite happened against the Galactic Federation. Usually the space pirates, they come in and screw things up, or the X Parasite. But anyways, the point is that there's this history showing that the Galactic Federation doesn't always make the best decisions when it comes to Metroid research or this effort to acquire power. So with Samus being the true only known Metroid in existence, even though she's still like part human, part Chozo at the same time, she's a mess, but in a cool, freakish way. They may want to do research on her. They may want to try and control her more, contain her a little bit more, and that could become conflict. So maybe instead of Samus versus the Chozo or Samus versus the X-Parasite, the Metroids, or the Chozo, or the Space Pirates, it's Samus versus the Galactic Federation. So there's a lot of material there, and I think that could be a very interesting direction they could take Metroid 6. So, just some food for thought. Thank you, DW, for Smash. Thank you for letting me know everything looks and sounds fine. Thank you, Natsu, as well. Appreciate it. AB James. Okay, the chat jumped on me. AB James. There may be one more short teaser trailer for Tears of the Kingdom next month that will feature one more big reveal about the game, underground, the dungeon, etc., and the blowout come in March. That's my guess. I want... Okay, so... I'm okay. That wouldn't be the worst if that's what happens. It's kind of mind-blowing if that's what happens. Like March? The game comes out May 12th. But, like... If you mean like another 90-second teaser where we just get the same level of information, I don't know. I think we need to see gameplay. Like, I think we need to see, like, what the game is about. I think we need to get an understanding of the gameplay loop, and we have zero understanding of that. Granted, maybe they give us that in a Zelda Direct in April, as they've done with Splatoon and Xenoblade last year. So, it's conceivable. Basically, my point is that if they do that thing where they just give us another 90-second teaser, I just hope that they promise that there's something else coming soon after, like a treehouse or something. Like, they tell us that more details are coming soon. Like, I don't need anything specific, just something like that, so I know that the Zelda information is continuing. It's not just, hey, here's another 90-second teaser, and we're going to go radio silent for another year. Like, not that. I honestly doubt it's just going to be 90 seconds. Like, maybe it is just like another 3. I'm not expecting like a 20-minute segment on Tears of the Kingdom, just for the record. I'm expecting a feature-length trailer, like a legitimate 3.5 minute, maybe 4-minute trailer, somewhere in that range. And they talk about it a little bit, and they announce some things like Amiibo, maybe a collector's edition, maybe the Zelda OLED, maybe that's saved for later on. But that's sort of like a ballpark idea of what I'm expecting. I just would be shocked if they just give us another 90-second teaser. I don't see that. I really don't. But it depends. And maybe if it's a direct mini instead of a mini, I think my prediction is that it's at least like a fully featured trailer and a few more tidbits, and then beyond that, they'll start kind of giving us updates on social media, and maybe they'll announce a treehouse, and then maybe they'll have a Zelda Direct. I want all of that. They maybe want to give us one of those, but I want all of it. J.R. Tolkien. Long day. Saw 7 clients without a break. Exhausted. Lie to me and tell me there will be a Direct soon, and we will finally learn all of the Zelda things. I try not to lie. So, but I will tell you that I do believe that a Nintendo Direct is happening in February. So, yeah, I think there's a Direct happening in February, and I think it'll be more than a 90-second teaser. Hopefully. Liam Hughes, told you all Switch 2 was coming out. So, I may make a video on that tomorrow. I haven't done too much research on it, but apparently someone is suggesting that something could happen within the next 12 months, which would place it probably this year at the end. It's why you gotta take everything with a grain of salt, right? I don't want to focus on Switch 2 tonight necessarily, but, a great way to have a great holiday is have Tears of the Kingdom now, have some DLC come out, announce a new 3D Mario, release it with a new system in the holiday, then you have like that 1-2 Zelda Mario punch for this year. That's a great way to get things going for a new system. It's a great way to do it. Many will have you believe that's not what's happening, so I'm not sure, but, I would I'm all for it if that's the case. I also want to I want to make a video at some point talking about how Switch 1 owners have nothing to be worried about when it comes to Switch 2. Because whenever I make a video about Switch 2, there's always a few comments I see from different people. Probably people who don't follow the channel or pay attention to Nintendo news often, but like, you know, more maybe casual fans. And then they see that there's a Switch 2 or talk of it, and they're like, oh man, I just got an OLED. Because I guess my point is that I get the sense that there's a lot of people out there that don't follow the news every day and will hear that Switch 2 is coming, and they're worried about their recent purchase and think that it's now invalidated. And yeah, that's why I want to kind of make like a dedicated video kind of illustrating why that's not going to be the case in full detail. But, you know, like with that in mind, I'll say, one, the Switch is like what, around 120 million systems sold, around there. It's insane how much it's sold, and it's still going strong. Software sales are ridiculously good on Switch. Nintendo has no real reason to stop supporting the Switch anytime soon. So when we talk about a new system, at least with me, and I think many others that talk about this with regularity, we assume that Switch is going to be supported for the next like 3-ish years. It's not like new games coming out for Switch. Like, new games will be coming out this year for Switch, new games will be coming out next year for Switch, and I expect new games to be coming out for Switch even in 2025. So, I'm not, you know, when I talk about Switch 2, I'm not saying, oh, that's it, there's not going to be any more games for Switch. I think the situation that we'll see for Switch is going to be better than the situation we saw for 3DS when that came out. And let me explain why. Because when the 3DS came out, first off, Nintendo still supported it. There were still Nintendo-published titles coming out for the Nintendo 3DS in 2019. Switch came out March 2017, so they still supported the 3DS with new Nintendo-published games 2 years into the system. Now, a lot of those games were remakes and remasters, things of that nature. It was clear that they were moving over most of their effort over to the Switch, but there was still new content coming out for the 3DS. Good content, too. So, that was a 3DS situation. And there were still third-party games coming out long after. They still sold systems long after. The eShop and all that, you still have access to now, but it's become more limited. It's been well supported. And the 3DS came out, what was it, early 2011? Yeah, it came out early 2011, and there were still new games coming out for it in 2019. That's an 8-year cycle of support from Nintendo of releasing published titles. Pretty good. So, with Switch, I imagine it'll be a little better. And the reason why it'll be a little bit better is because I think that the Switch is a hybrid console. So, the 3DS was handheld, and the Switch was going to be making console-level games for Nintendo standards there. So, there was a huge power leap there. And while I do expect the next system to be more powerful, there's going to be a lot of cross-generational release games. A lot of games are going to be scaled down. That's already something that they're very accustomed to on Switch and other systems as well. I mean, there are still new games coming out for PS4. Think about that. PS5 has been out for a while already, and they're still supporting PS4. Nintendo has even more reason to support the Switch longer than Sony has to support the PS4. So, they're going to continue to support this system, and instead of it being like remasters or remakes that they're only going to put on the Switch while new stuff is on the Switch too, they're probably going to be the same games. So it's going to be even easier to get the job done, as opposed to having to focus on an entire other project. They just have to work on scaling down the project for both platforms. And considering that they already have this in mind because they have to focus on portal mode and dock mode and such, this is something they can do. And actually, going back to the 3DS era with a lot of those remakes, some of those remakes were from the Wii U, for example. And they were able to get it running on the 3DS. And that just sort of goes to show you that Nintendo can scale down their games. And actually, Miyamoto, this is more in the sort of mindset of like getting virtual console eShop digital games on there, but he was talking about how in this day and age it's a lot easier with the development environment to get games ported over and scaled down and up. So that applies for cross-generational games too. So with all that in mind, the standard that Nintendo set with the 3DS is that it'll get new games from Nintendo for 2 years. So let's say Switch, and again, this is just, I'll put this on the rumor territory for now. I'm going to do a more of a proper analysis on this information about maybe Switch coming out this year. But let's say earliest it comes out is holiday 2023, right? Like the window at this point, I've given up on Zelda coming out with this new system in May. If they announce a Switch 2 tomorrow, whatever, I don't care. I'm happy to take the L on that one. But I'm assuming it's sometime, like earliest possible, it's holiday 2023. So, and it's probably, I think it's sometime like 2024. But let's just say it comes out at the end of 2023. By the standard that Nintendo set with the 3DS, there should still be new games coming out for Switch at least until holiday 2025. But because I think it'll be even easier to support the system, and considering the standard set by Sony and Microsoft, and just how successful the Switch has been, not with just hardware sales, but software sales, I wouldn't be surprised if we're still seeing some support on the Switch from Nintendo in 2026. And they're still going to sell systems for years to come. There's still going to be eShop support and updates and patches, making sure it's all running well and good. And there's already, there's almost 6 years of incredible games on Switch. There's this huge, incredible backlog that you're going to have access to for years, and they're still going to support that with games this year and next year and probably beyond. So I don't really think that anyone who buys a Switch now should really be upset if a new system is announced within the next year or so. I don't think so. I mean, let's not forget that while we do have basically 6 years of games from Switch, we're about to enter the 7th year. This is like the longest home console generation we've ever seen from Nintendo, even though it's a hybrid. And we still don't know when they're announcing the system. This has been a very long generation. Nintendo is not really doing anyone a disservice by announcing a system within about a year from now, if a little bit, between 6 months and to a year and a half or so. Like, I don't think Nintendo's doing anyone a disservice. This has been a very long and healthy generation with consistent releases. When you think about it from that perspective, Nintendo's done a better job this generation than pretty much any other generation. So they haven't undervalued the system. So, from that perspective, the system has stayed at the same price. And so it's not like someone's bought it for $300 and then tomorrow Nintendo announces that it's $200. They haven't done that. Not yet. They have given us consistent content to play throughout. There haven't been the infamous droughts that Nintendo used to suffer from. Some of you may not even know about that, but back during like the GameCube days, even the Wii days and the Wii U days, the N64 days too, there were months, we go like 3, 4, 5 months sometimes without any major releases from Nintendo, and it sucked. And if that one major release they had was like not something you cared about, you're gonna have to wait all year. Like, that's not what happens anymore. Like, there's games every month pretty much from Nintendo, not even counting third-party stuff. So Nintendo supported the system with consistent releases. It's lasted longer. It's maintained its value. I think they've done a good job. So I don't think Nintendo should be like, they're not rushing is the point here. They haven't done anyone a disservice compared to previous platforms that they've done. The standard set there, they've only done better than that. They've lasted longer and have had more content throughout. So anyways, if you've just got a Switch, don't worry. It's going to be supported for years. Sorry, I clicked my water jug bottle thing. Guy you don't know. Hey there, the future of the Metroid series is looking brighter than ever. I agree. It's looking very bright. Metroid Dread was a great start. We have this information suggesting a new one's on the way. Metroid Prime 4 has been in development for some time, and I think at some point, relatively soon, they're going to have to blow the lids off that. And I know a lot of you are very skeptical about the Metroid Prime HD remaster, but I believe it. It's just a matter of time, and when it's announced, a lot of tunes are gonna change. Be like, oh wow, we just got Metroid Dread. There's a Metroid Prime remaster. Oh, then now Metroid Prime 4. Oh, maybe it does make sense for the next Metroid Dread sequel to come out. And then all of a sudden, people are like, hey, you know what? That idea, well, Metroid games coming out, if not every year, but with a close to a regularity similar to back to the first decade of the 2000s, where we had like 9 Metroid releases in 8 years. Like, we could get, if not exactly to that frequency, we could get to that sort of level of prominence where Metroid is a fairly common thing. So I think things are looking promising, but that won't prove to be totally true until they start making some announcements. So we'll see. I'm not gonna assume there's a direct next week. I'm not expecting a direct next week. I think we'll have to wait a little bit later. Think mid-February. That's what I think. Right, Nintendo? The ringleaders in the Federation and Exilian Star Corporation definitely need some more elaboration. There's some sketchy things going on with them. No, Heelson, are we talking about DLC for Dread? No, we're talking about a sequel for Dread. Like, where does the story go after Dread? And yeah, so I think that it's finally time to focus on the evolution of Samus as a Metroid and what that means for her being a human / Chozo / Metroid. She's 2 different kinds of Chozo. She's like the wise Chozo, and she's also the warrior Chozo, and she's also a Metroid. It's crazy. So I see you got a super chat here. Let me check on that. 2 super chats. Brian Doe, thank you very much for the super chat. Masked Nintendo Bandit, Tears of the Kingdom Minish Theory today. I have not seen that yet, but I'll check it out. I'll just give my 2 cents. I don't know where he's coming from, but there is some imagery that Nintendo has released a while back when Breath of the Wild came out. It's like he came with like the creating a champion, like some concept or like different things that they released talking about the game. There was imagery that showed off Minish, or characters that look like the Minish from the Minish cap. A small people that they were considering adding to the game, but they ultimately decided not to. They had like small houses and stuff. And I think it does make sense to see more different types of races and creatures, and just overall more of an abundance of life in Tears of the Kingdom, because obviously, yes, it may seem very scary because of Ganondorf coming back to life, but leading up to that, there's this window of time where there's a peace in Hyrule that's established. They defeat Calamity Ganon, and with that in mind, most, if not everyone, were assuming that for a long while, peace was established. So, odds are many people left Hyrule, many creatures left Hyrule because of the Calamity, but with that being gone, perhaps more wildlife come in, perhaps more people come out of hiding, perhaps more people come back to the land from lands beyond, and there's a plot reason to believe that they will actually add more characters and have more variety. Considering they're building off this game, I think this game is going to be dense with content. So with that all in mind, and they had this idea of the Minish, and we've seen a lot of evidence that they were going back to a lot of ideas they had for Breath of the Wild and incorporating it into Tears of the Kingdom, I think there's a really great chance that that could happen. So yeah, I'm for it. I'm for seeing them. What if they're the new Korok, like finding like these little Minish people, find these houses and find these little characters. They're even smaller than Koroks, so I don't know how that'll work, but it could be a collectible of some sort. Natsu, Metroid 6 coming in 2041. I doubt it. I don't think we have to wait that long. Darth OP, if Metroid Prime 1, in parentheticals, remaster, is a thing, what would you want to be added into the game that wasn't there in the original? The thing I would see added is Metacrade. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to mind to me as well, adding Metacrade. Do I think they'll do that, though? I don't think they will. I think... I mean, I would love it. I would love for them to add a new boss fight. But you look at Metroid Dread, and they have an epic boss fight there with Kraid. It's kind of, it's different, but you know, it's there's similarities. I mean, it's Kraid, so that in and of itself makes it a similarity. But like Kraid and Metroid Dread has this giant like metal like thing around his neck, metal collar and chain, and Metacraid is like a, you know, a mechanically enhanced Kraid, but it has like a giant metal piece on his head. So it's not the same thing, but you know, there's a little bit of a similarity there. I guess my point is, like, we just got Kraid and Dread. Should they add Kraid again? I mean, Metroid Prime, Metroid Dread, two different types of Metroid games, two different like gameplay, two different producers, two different directors and development studios. So they could do that, but I also feel like there's got to be some level of understanding between both. So I do wonder if they'll do that. Like, for example, we didn't have Ridley in Dread, right? So I do kind of speculate that maybe they'll keep it a little bit of a division there, but I'll take it. But let's assume that's not what they do, right? Let's assume they do something different. First off, I'll say that I'm expecting not really any like significant new content, just because I think the game itself is gonna be enhanced a lot from a gameplay and like just from a gameplay and visual perspective. And I think the game is only gonna be separated by a year to a year and a half from Prime 4, so I don't think they want to add new content to hold us over. But if they were to, and it's not Metacraid, I could see them sort of like reimagining the boss fights. So something I sort of envision is that maybe what we see from the Prime remaster gives us an idea of the gameplay direction of Prime 4. So we had a melee attack added in Samus Returns, and that was in Metroid Dread. Granted, again, to my point from earlier, two separate development studios, two separate development directions, they may not translate over. But what if they did? What if they also incorporate a melee attack in Prime Remaster? They speed up the gameplay a little bit, have her move a little bit more, they tinker with the map somewhat. And with this new melee attack, that would also mean they have to rethink the combat a bit. And also, dual analog controls. Kind of play a little bit more like a traditional shooter in that respect. So I think rethinking the combat a little bit would be interesting. And it might be fun to have a melee attack, and the melee attack, maybe what it can function as is if you see like a big attack coming at you, maybe like say like Ridley swings his tail at you, you can actually melee to reflect a tail attack back. So maybe there's a little bit of that in there where they sort of remix the boss fights a little bit, and just overall combat with a few new gameplay variations. And I'll tell you what, like, I do think that Magmoor Caverns should have a boss fight. I do. I agree with that. I think there should be. And, you know, since we're thinking on it a little bit more, and we're kind of talking about this idea that maybe they introduce a melee attack, and maybe this melee attack has, like, actual significant gameplay implications, they actually change around the combat a little bit. What if they do that, and they, sorry, I might lost my train of thought, and they add a boss fight to Magmoor Caverns. But I guess the point I was getting at here is that if you have a boss fight, there should be a power-up, right? So if there's a melee attack and they change around the combat here, maybe there could be a melee power-up, and you obtain this melee power-up in Magmoor Caverns. And that might be really cool. Maybe this melee power-up can break, I don't know, something. Or maybe it's just a stronger version. So it doesn't actually, maybe it's an optional boss fight. And maybe that's the best way to go about it. It's something that you could skip, but if you don't, you can obtain this power-up that will give you a stronger melee attack, and that'll pretty much be it. Maybe it gives you a little bit of super armor, so like you do like a little bit of a rush, so you don't take as much damage, and you do a little bit more damage, and that may make the game a little bit easier. But also, Metroid Prime is not an easy game to begin with, and maybe they could include a few difficulties that are tougher from the get-go. So, just saying to keep in mind that I don't know, I think that's something that might work really well. There's another super chat here I didn't get to. Thank you, Samuel A, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Samuel A says, Dark Samus and Metroid Prime fights in crispy HD would be amazing. When do you think a direct happens? I'm thinking February 17th. You may be right about that. Oh, hold on. I think it's gonna be a little sooner than that. You said the 15th. It could be the 15th. Apparently, February Directs tend to happen on Tuesdays. So I guess then, if that's really the case, I would be thinking February 14th. That's what I'm kind of thinking. Isn't that Valentine's Day, though? Would they do it on Valentine's Day? Yes, because they love the Metroid fans. Something they announce anything Metroid there. The Zelda fans, though, they deserve the love. Nahilson, I still don't understand where the story is going after Federation Force after the stolen Metroid. So, let's clarify some things here, because I think this sometimes confuses people. For this stream, we've been talking about Metroid and, well, we're actually talking about both. So, there's two different types of games. There's the Metroid series and the Metroid Prime series. Metroid Prime falls somewhere, I forget where. Is it between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion? I gotta double check that. Anyways, the main point is that the Metroid Prime series is kind of its own thing that's fitted somewhere in the middle of the Metroid timeline. So when we're talking about Metroid Prime 4, Metroid Prime Hunters 2, 1, and Metroid Prime Federation Force, those are all kind of like their own thing. But when we're talking about Metroid Fusion, and then Metroid Dread, and then Metroid 6, that's its own thing as well. Two separate sort of like story lines and arcs to kind of be concerned with, right? So when we talk about Federation Force, it's important to understand that it is Metroid Prime Federation Force. And it has been confirmed that at the end of Federation Force, Sylix is the character that's stealing the Metroid. The Metroid egg is hatched into a Metroid, and we already know that Sylix is chasing Samus at the end of Prime 3, and Kensuke Tanabe, the Prime producer, has already talked to us and told us that Sylix will be involved with the story for Metroid Prime 4 that lead up to that. So Sylix is chasing Samus at the end of Metroid Prime 3, or following Samus, pursuing her for whatever reason, and we also see on the side, at the end of Federation Force, that he steals a Metroid from the Federation. And the interesting thing about the Metroid Prime trilogy is that Metroid Prime isn't just a cool name. Metroid Prime is the name of the main villain of the Metroid Prime trilogy. The Metroid Prime, I don't want to, some people may have not played this series, so I don't want to spoil too much, but basically, Metroid Prime is this giant, powerful monster that you have to fight in the first game, and it changes in 2 and 3. Its form is different, but at 3, you finally totally, completely annihilate it from existence. So, the Metroid Prime trilogy is completed. The namesake is defeated, it's done. So, if they're making a new Metroid Prime, the implication is there's another Prime Metroid out there. Another powerful beast that needs to be handled. Now, I, for one, would just prefer that the Prime series just mean, hey, we are making a 3D first-person adventure Metroid. But there could be a story. It could be that, but it also may be a story implication. It may be both. And assuming that this is legit, that Metroid Prime 4 comes with the implied new powerful Metroid to fight, which I would say makes sense, then this stolen Metroid egg by Sylix, who clearly is not working with the Federation directly, this Metroid has something to do with the story. This Metroid, I believe, is going to become the next Prime Metroid, the next major threat that needs to be handled, that the story is going to be centered around. And Sylix is going to be the catalyst for this. He's going to take this Metroid either to Space Pirates or do something with it. Maybe he's taken some of the experiment notes and material from the initial Metroid Prime and is working with the Space Pirates to recreate it because he wants to use it to take down the Federation Force. Maybe it's going to be like some sort of political thing. I doubt it, but maybe, where he steals the Metroid and has it wreak havoc in some sort of planet, and the idea is to make the Federation look bad, how they had this thing in captivity, and it was their Metroid that escaped that captivity and destroyed an entire civilization. Like, maybe that's what happens, and then the Galactic Federation sends in Samus to take care of it. Like, that could be kind of like where the story is at. But basically, yes, Federation Force, the reason why it's important is that it's implying that there is a new Metroid that Sylix has, and this somehow ties into Metroid Prime 4, which I believe that Metroid will become the next major serious monster Metroid thing that we have to deal with. Weave Gamer. I believe they will explore Samus' Metroid abilities and could be similar to how Mega Man copied abilities from other robot masters. She could take those powers. That's another great idea. Yeah, and it doesn't just have to be about sucking out life. It could be about copying abilities. It could be Samus Kirby. It's a joke, but also there's some truth to it. DW for Smash. I hope we're getting a regular direct with other announcements, maybe only 2 or 3 weeks from now. That's what I think is happening. AB James, the Razor Ball. Samus's Morph Ball begins spinning like an active saw blade, and you can burrow through certain terrain. I thought of that power up a while ago. That's actually really cool, and that definitely is Metroid-esque. It's like what is it? The second Metroid that can like burrow on the ground and come out, and like, yeah, that's a fantastic idea. So they're really like we're already thinking of some good ideas. Like the first one's obviously just like sucking the life force out of things. We had a grapple, maybe it's a grapple beam where you can attach it and suck out energy, as we've seen in previous games. Then you got this we again with the idea that you can copy abilities from certain enemies, and now AB James with your ability idea where the Razor Ball can burrow and be spiking and do damage. Like these are new power-ups that we haven't seen from, well, the grapple beams are done in the Prime series, but you know, Metroid, different thing, and it can have a little bit of a different implication. Anyways, there's these different ideas that we're kind of touching on that could go in this direction of a more powerful Samus with Metroid abilities. Nintendo, they could do a plot where Samus is perhaps deemed too powerful to exist and try to eliminate her. Exactly. Yes, the Galactic Federation may just be like, you know what, let's if we're either A, they want to take her into captivity to kind of like micromanage her or test on her and experiment on her, or it's we need to get rid of her because she's a threat. Like, yeah, totally. Liam Hughes, there won't be a Metroid Dread sequel, but Metroid 6 will be the last game after 3 more Prime games after Prime 4. I don't know. I mean, Metroid 6 would be a sequel to Metroid Dread. But you think it's after a whole trilogy of the Prime games. I don't know if we have to wait that long. With the initial Prime trilogy, there were new Metroid games coming out. So let's go over the timeline. I don't know. I feel like this point is lost on some people. Like just how prevalent the Metroid series was in the first decade. It was actually pretty significant. So I'm literally just gonna like share with you this wiki page that shows you all the dates. It's pretty impressive. Actually, no, Radio Times. I'll show that they have the list right here. So check this out, guys. Okay, I'm dying. So starting in the year 2002, Metroid Fusion, then GameCube, also in 2002, Metroid Prime. So they had 2 different Metroid games for 2 different platforms come out. This is a typo. Metroid Prime 2 did not come out the same year as Metroid Prime 1. This came out in 2004. But 2 years later, Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Prime 2. So 4 Metroid games in this short time span. Then Metroid Prime Pinball in 2005, the Metroid Prime Hunters in 2006, then Metroid Prime 3, Corruption 2007. Then 2 years later, we see Metroid Prime Trilogy, which is a compilation of all 3 with some gameplay additions and remastered visuals, and then Metroid Other M in 2010. So between 2002 and 2010, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different Metroid releases. You could call Metroid Prime Trilogy a cop-out because it's just a compilation of 3 different games, but there were some changes there, and I think they are significant. So let's say 8.5, or those Pinball's a spin-off, and Hunter's a Point is, they were averaging more than 1 Metroid release per year. Metroid was supported in the first decade. And the video I uploaded yesterday was simply trying to argue that Nintendo may go back to something like this. It won't be exactly the same. And it may not be every year. But I do think we're looking at a scenario where it's going to become more of a consistent release. So we got Dread in 2021. They gave us a free DLC update in 2022. That gave us content. We were playing Metroid Dread in the first half of the year. Less than a year ago, Metroid Dread was still getting new content. So let's not act like it's been like this long time since we haven't gotten any sort of new Metroid content. And then, this is assuming the rumors are true, and we don't know if they are, but assuming the rumors are true, some sort of Prime Remastered Prime Trilogy could come out this year. And if that comes out this year, then you got Metroid content in 2023. And if Prime 4 does come out in 2024 for the new system, there you go. Which I don't think is a stretch because they restarted development back in 2019. It's already been more than 4 years since they announced the restart. So for it to come out holiday 2024, that's basically a 6-year development cycle because they announced it January. They probably didn't actually restart in January, probably restarted beforehand. So we're basically looking like at least like a 6-year dev cycle from the restart. So that's a long, or just a 6-year gap, I should say. Long time. And now we have this information from this leaker saying that Metroid Dread 2, or I call it Metroid Dread 2, I call it Metroid 6, but Mercury Steam working on another Metroid project that's due in 2025. Which makes some sense because Samus Returns came out in 2017, 4 years later, Metroid Dread in 2021, 4 years later, maybe Metroid 6 in 2025. And if that holds true, we're getting Metroid content pretty much every year. Now, I think at some point we'll see a gap. Maybe 2026 has nothing, or maybe it's just DLC or something. Or maybe they push the next 2D Metroid to 2026 because they're going to have DLC for Prime 4 then, right? So that's something to consider. Maybe they do both. I don't know. But the point is, there's a lot of material there. And what if they give us another Metroid Prime Pinball? What if they give us a multiplayer-centric Metroid like Hunters or Federation Force? Those are spin-offs, but I think those are good spin-offs. Now, some people say, oh, Federation Force sucks. No, Federation Force is actually a really good game. The problem with Federation Force is that it came out when we were waiting for a legitimate mainline Metroid Prime game. It's kind of like, you know, we got like a... Imagine if Nintendo, instead of announcing Tears of the Kingdom... Well, so imagine... This is probably the best example. Imagine that Breath of the Wild didn't exist. And we were waiting... There's no new Zelda on Wii U. And then in the middle of the Switch era, like in the E3 2019, when they announced the new Zelda game, they announced the new Zelda game, but it wasn't Tears of the Kingdom, and there's no Breath of the Wild, but instead they announced a 3D version of Triforce Heroes. That's the equivalent of Federation Force. Federation Force, from a graphical perspective, is actually impressive for the 3DS, but it has an art style that's very chibi, which doesn't match any of the other Metroid releases, so it goes against the art style of the entire Metroid series, and it came when we were waiting for a mainline series, and it was a departure from what we come to expect from Metroid. That all said, it is a cool game that explores the Federation and interesting cooperative play that we don't really see too often. So I think in a world where we're getting Metroid Prime 4 and we're getting things like Metroid Dread, if they have another team that can put together a spin-off in those off years where there's not a mainline Metroid ready, I'll take a Metroid Prime Federation Force that's made with an appropriate art style for the IP and is done on Switch or the next system that can run the game better and have an appropriate online setup. Because I played Metroid Federation Force on my 3DS and I tried to enjoy it, and I enjoyed the gameplay, but when I tried to play co-op with my friend, I would drop out every time because Wi-Fi and 3DS just ain't the same. It's just not the same as playing on a system that can connect with a LAN or Ethernet. I mean, an Ethernet cable. It's just totally different. Anyways, though, Metroid, once upon a time, had consistent releases, and I think we could get back to not exactly like that, but something where we're seeing something, if not every year, most years. There is that potential. Nate Hielson, I hope they involve the Metroid to be like the grapple voltage. Ooh, that'd be cool. Alright. Alright, so right now the chat has jumped again. I see another super chat from Brian Doe. Awesome. I'm gonna check it out. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. Brian Doe says, hear me out. Metroid Warriors. It could work. I'll take Federation Force 2, thank you. So it could work. What would be interesting about it, and I don't want this to happen, so just tell you that straight up, but if they did that, if they gave us a Metroid Warriors, I would think that the Metroids, that's not a word. I mean, is Metroids like plural and singular at the same time, right? Anyways, I wasn't talking about Metroid, the species. I was just talking about just different Metroid characters. I like combined my words. There's enough material there. You think about, there's the hunters from you got the Metroid Prime hunters. You have the hunters from Robert Powell. Metroids is plural. Okay. But anyways, you have the hunters from hunters. You have the hunters from Metroid Prime 3. So that's like what, 10 Metroid? Then you can 10 Metroids. I'm gonna say it again. Samus is a Metroid, so maybe they're all Metroids. I'm crazy. I'm off my rocker. I've been up since 6:20 a.m. I'll have you know. It's 8:53 p.m. I've had a busy day. Woke up, played tennis in the morning. Then I worked on the Zelda video. Then I had a meeting that we'll see what happens with that. And then I went to the gym, and then I came back. At some point, I ate dinner and breakfast. Yeah, I've had 2 meals today, I guess. And now I'm streaming. So, yeah, nonstop. Where was I, though? So, okay, and you could add a Federation Trooper. I guess you could use, I hope you could use Dark Samus. Ridley. Kraid's like a boss. I don't see Kraid doing it. You got a Ravenbeak. Ah, man, I'm having a hard time thinking of 20. There's what's the name of the doppelganger for Samus in Metroid Fusion? The X-Parasite. I forgot. Doesn't it have a name? That, though, could be it. Then there's also they could use the SAX. Thank you, Sabo. They could maybe, the thing is, like, if you use Ridley, you also kind of want to have, like, you want to have enemies too, right? You want to have boss fights. I don't know. Well, there's the Emmy. The Emmy would be pretty cool. And there's 7 different Emmy. Okay, I'll give you that it's conceivable. I'll give you that. But I don't expect it at all. Devin Lyons, do you think they're going to have the Wii on NSO? No. Sadly. Not anytime soon. My perspective, I don't think Nintendo's going to add GameCube or Wii to Nintendo Switch Online anytime soon. Maybe years down the road. Years down the road, I could see them adding it. I think right now, Nintendo's actually going to be focused on taking a look at 3DS games and Nintendo Wii games and Nintendo GameCube games and thinking, oh, we can fix these up and make them modern releases. So we talk about how there's a Metroid Prime HD remaster, maybe 2 and 3 as well. We're waiting on Twilight Princess and Moonbreaker HD, which have already been remastered. We're just kind of waiting on them. They'll have to be changed somewhat for Switch, but those as well. There is the Kid Icarus Uprising remaster that may be in development. There is the F-Zero GX one that's been rumored by a few different credible sources. It's supposedly coming out this year. So you already have a myriad of those. Also, there's the Bat and Kaitos report that I'm skeptical of, but maybe that too. So, and these are all, and we just got Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, which is from Wii. I mean, I say we just got it. I mean, I'm from the future. We're gonna get it. It's coming out this February. So you have this slew of games that may or are being remastered. And I think they're meant in part to replace the now almost empty library of Wii U ports that they can bring over. There's only a few left. The Zelda HD Twins and Xenoblade X are the big ones. Star Fox Zero I don't think will ever get ported. I think they just need to make a new Star Fox game that's not a story reimagining. So, yeah, so for those reasons, I think they're going to be focused on that. One, so because they're running out of Wii U ports, they want something else to kind of fill up the lineup with something that doesn't take as much effort, but can still be a quality thing. And then also, you look back to how Nintendo transitioned from Wii U and 3DS to Switch. We saw a lot of remasters on 3DS or remakes. That's another reason why I think we could see a lot of these. I think some of Nintendo's main studios will already already transitioning to our next big projects for the next big system. They may still be cross-generational releases, but they still may need some time, and they want those bigger releases to come out near that system. And so having some other smaller team work on a remaster is easier to get done because the blueprint's already there for a quality game. And mind you, some of these Wii U ports and remasters we've seen throughout the Switch era are not bad. They're great. Some of them have new content in there. Take a look at, for example, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. That remaster almost looks like a remake, and it has Future Connected, another 10 to 20 hour experience there. It's like a whole little mini game RPG to play. Pikmin 3 Deluxe had new content in there. 3D World Deluxe had Bowser's Fury, new content in there. So I think some of these remasters could actually be really cool, but they're probably going to be $60 releases or somewhere between $50 to $70 if they decide to raise things up, as opposed to us getting basically the original releases on Switch for now. But down the road, maybe 10 years from now, maybe even sooner, maybe Nintendo will start to work in GameCube and Wii into their virtual consoles. Those become more aged. They're pretty aged already, but yeah, that's what I kind of expect. It's challenging though too, like when you think about DS and 3DS games, because there's not a dual screen there. And for now, Wii is doable because of the Joy-Cons. They can mimic anything, everything done on Wii. GameCube is a little bit challenging because you lack the analog triggers, but with some minor reworkings, it can be done. But at that point, may as well be a remaster. Well, it's more likely they'll do the work for a remaster rather than coming up with a system that can just make it work across the board for every GameCube game. They could do it. It wouldn't require that much work. You know, I know people emulate GameCube games. There's a way to do it without actually having a dedicated analog trigger. There's just some challenges. Anyway, so I want to check this question out because I've seen it. So BBB added me. After watching the recent video, I'm curious. Why don't you recognize Majora's Mask NSO as Zelda's 2022 release? So, Majora's Mask is... It's not even really... It's not that they added multiplayer to it. It's the original release, upscaled for Nintendo Switch Online, and that's it. This isn't like... There's no legitimate, significant development effort here. And it's not something that matches up even remotely close to any other Zelda project we've seen that was a dedicated Zelda project for those respective years. So let's go over the Switch timeline, and so you can see my point. So 2017 was Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild, biggest, most expensive Nintendo game in history, Majora's Mask on Nintendo Switch Online. Not changing the game at all, just putting it in there on the emulator. Significant difference, right? Okay, so then 2018. 2018, we had the definitive edition for Fire Emblem Warriors. So that's not Fire Emblem Warriors. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition. That came out in 2018. 2019, we had Grezzo make a full-on remake for Link's Awakening. Full-on remake with new content with the Dungeon Maker, Link's Awakening. Then in 2020, during the pandemic year, when everyone doubted that there would be a major Zelda release, and they had announced that they were giving us DLC, if I remember correctly, for it was this indie release. I forget the name of it. I know some of you in the chat know what I'm talking about. It's the rhythm game that's based off Zelda. Googling it really quick. Rhythm Zelda game. Cadence of Hyrule. So they were giving us a physical release that included the DLC for Cadence of Hyrule, a game that came out the year prior. And people thought that that was going to be the Zelda release for 2020. People were convinced of that. I had arguments with people about it. And that was just a physical release for a game that came out the year beforehand that had DLC included. People thought that's what the Zelda release was for the year. They didn't even care the Zelda name was made by an indie studio. No, it was actually Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, the biggest release for Nintendo's holiday back in 2020, and it's the best-selling Musou game ever. It gave us a new story content in the Breath of the Wild world, granted prequels, different timeline, but we got to explore Castletown and other parts of the world of Breath of the Wild we couldn't before, because it was set in the past. So that was that year's Zelda content, not a physical release of a indie title that came out the year beforehand, which probably falls more along the lines of the Majora's Mask NSO thing. Something that is already content that's already there, that hasn't really been redone or remade in any way, that just ported over. Then 2021, we got Skyward Sword HD, which improved the visuals, added motion controls that worked for Switch. They were improved upon. It added dual analog controls, so you had both ways to play. It added 60 frames per second. Like, that game was actually a pretty quality remaster. That was 2021's release. 2022, Majora's Mask being added to NSO does not count as a Zelda release. Like, it's nothing compared to any of those other releases. It's not new content. It's not remastered content. It's just porting over Majora's Mask with no reworkings. So that's why I don't consider it. I don't think Nintendo really considers it either. The point is to continue having Zelda relevant year by year, but also I think the bigger point that should be made is that they don't necessarily need to hold themselves to having it come out every single year per se. It's more about keeping Zelda in the conversation and being relevant with frequency. So there may be a year or two where there's not a Zelda release. Tears of the Kingdom was going to come out in 2022. They delayed it to May 12th of 2023, 5 months later, 5 months out of the year. So it was gonna be that Zelda release. Now, I don't know, but I believe, and many others as well, think that Nintendo's been sitting on a lot of games. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another Zelda release that Nintendo's been sitting on. Actually, we've heard the reports for Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. They've been sitting on those, and I'm actually suggesting that maybe there's another one. Maybe a 2D Zelda that's actually been in development for some time, if not entirely done, and they're sitting on it. That really wouldn't surprise me. And it's all about spacing things out. So I think they gave up on having literally a Zelda release every calendar year, because that's not what really matters. It's just about keeping that Zelda conversation going, because it's good for the brand. And Tears of the Kingdom is going to be a big release, a big moment for Zelda, and we're just a few months away. Hopefully I answered your question. Let's see here. Nintendo, how many people here are interested in actually buying the Prime remaster? I'm curious. Okay, that's a fantastic question. Let's put a poll. We have about 97-ish people watching. Guys, if you're watching, please leave a like. It's super helpful for the stream. It can get it out to more people. And it also help more people for the poll. So I'm going to create this poll. Who here will buy a... I'm going to put the quotes by Jeff Grubb. A big boy remaster for Metroid Prime HD if it's announced soon. I better see 100%. I'm just kidding. But I am definitely curious what the numbers will be. And thank you guys for telling me cadence of Hyrule. But I figured it out on Google before the chat updated. Guy you don't know added me. Did you know Gaming made a video about scrapped Metroid games, and one part detailed a pitch for Metroid Tactics game that was denied by Nintendo? You know, I could see like a Metroid game being made sort of like a Mario Rabbids. I probably wouldn't be interested in it, but be interesting. Although, you know, like you think about like Federation Force and having different teams, and like having different strategies while planning around where you put different like efforts and things like that. There's some cool stuff you could do with that potentially. I'm trying to check in with the chat here. Let's see. BBB. I see. You don't consider Majora's Mask as a significant release. Got it. Thanks for answering. Yeah, I went on a huge tangent, but no problem. Weeb out there. Do you think the Metroid Prime 2 Echoes remaster will have upgraded multiplayer online? So I've been super focused on just talking about Metroid Prime HD, but what about Metroid Prime 2 and 3? This is a great video. Gotta do some research on that. But well, first off, I don't know what the answer. Right? Like I don't know, right? And I understand you're asking what I think. I would be highly disappointed if Metroid Prime 2 didn't have some sort of online multiplayer, but also I don't know when we're going to see Metroid Prime 2 added. So the initial story was that Metroid Prime Trilogy was going to happen, and then it transitioned to, oh, Metroid Prime HD is going to be its own thing, but Prime 2 and 3 will come down the road, but aren't going to be as significant of remasters. So, what does that mean? We've heard from Imran Khan about an engine that Retro Studios is working on. And the idea is that they were working on this engine for Metroid Prime, the original, to do a remake of that. And Nintendo greenlit that, but then also gave them Metroid Prime 4 to do afterwards. So, the idea is that there's a new engine that they're using to build, that they use to build Metroid Prime HD. So it's not going to just be like, hey, let's take Metroid Prime on the GameCube and give it widescreen, clean up the textures, add dual analog controls, and call it a day. Like, no, we're not talking about a basic remaster for Metroid Prime HD. We're talking about a game that has new assets, it has a new underlying engine, like, it's going to be something more significant. Hence the terminology that I believe Jeff Grubb used back when he initially reported there's like a big boy remaster. But 2 and 3 are not being called big boy remasters. And that's where it becomes challenging for me, because I would love to see an upgraded multiplayer online for Metroid Prime 2. But I don't know how much effort is going to go into 2 and 3. I feel like 2 and 3 might get something more along the lines of a Skyward Sword HD level of a remaster, which seems very minimal. And the thing is that making Skyward Sword HD 60 frames per second was a big deal for Skyward Sword, Not a big deal for 2 and 3 because the games are already 60 frames per second. So it's a given that those games should be 60 frames per second. If they're not, that's just ridiculous. So I mean, it would be neat if they did something else instead, right? Like, I would be okay with, if they sold them separately. I would love it if they did that. I just don't know. I just don't know how they'll handle it. I also don't know how they're going to handle releasing Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. Like, are they going to be a twin pack? Or are they going to be separate releases? And how much content are they going to change? So, like, Wind Waker had the whole Tingle bottles, but it's entirely dependent upon Miiverse, which doesn't exist anymore. So are they just going to scrap that content from the game? Are they going to add anything else to substitute that? So this is where, I have this kind of confusion because I just don't know how they're going to handle transitioning these 4 games over, because it feels like they're being saved for later. But there's another angle to this, right? Because we go back to this line of discussion or rumors about the Metroid Prime trilogy. At first we thought it was Metroid Prime trilogy, but maybe they just heard that all 3 of the trilogy were coming over, and the assumption was they were coming together, because then later on it was said, no, Metroid Prime's getting remade or remastered significantly, then 2 and 3 are coming down the road. What does down the road mean? Are they going to be reworked the same way? I doubt we're in a situation where let's say we get Metroid Prime HD this year, then we get Prime 2 next year, then Prime 3 in 2025, and then Prime 4 comes out 2026. I don't believe that at all. Now maybe you could argue maybe they don't like space them out by a year. Maybe they space them out by 6 months. Another consideration, I've seen some people talk about this, is that because it's been so long that they've been sitting on this Metroid Prime game, maybe they just decided to make it an entire trilogy collection. And this part gets tricky to me too, because if I assume that they greatly reworked Metroid Prime HD, the first one, would they just have one that's greatly reworked and the other 2 are just kind of like not? I don't know. That's also kind of strange. Like that they would do that. So I don't really know how they would go about doing this. So this is what I think. I think that if assuming Metroid Prime HD is its own standalone title, 1, 2, and 3 come down the road, I'm still not sure how they're going to release them. But I'm assuming they're not going to have as much effort put in. I think they're going to be kind of upscaled to a clean HD and maybe sold at a discount price. And there will not be online added. That's what I think. It's not what I want, but that's what I think. That said, it wouldn't shock me if down the road Nintendo has like a Metroid online multiplayer game in the works. I don't know if that's including the Prime 4, if it's its own thing, but I feel like down the road that's gotta happen. So that's kind of my perspective. I don't think 2 and 3 are getting as significant work done, so I don't expect it. But if they did decide to go in the direction of greatly remastering 2 and 3 as well, then I would assume that the online multiplayer in 2 would be enhanced, changed around, and made on, and would be actually online. But I don't think they're doing that, so I'm going to assume no. But we'll see what the future holds. So interestingly, checking on the poll so far, 79% of you, 47 votes, will buy the Big Boy remaster for Metroid Prime if it's announced soon. So, Nintendo, it's people. That's a few sales right there. So, you get to it. Narwhal Gaming. I would love a Quake-style Metroid game with some good multiplayer. Ooh, that would be cool. I miss Quake. That was fun. That was fun. Alright, did I get this before? I don't think I did. Alright, Darth OP added me. What do you say about this Metroid Prime remaster? Move Thardus to Magmore Caverns and make Shigot Prime the boss of Phendrena, like the ultimate Satki of the Shigots, like the ultimate sage of the Shigots. That's interesting. Yeah, why you guys voted no for Metroid? You gotta buy the game. So move Thardus to Magmore Caverns. He's not really ice-based, is he? I mean, his arena's ice-based, and that would be a departure, but I can kind of see where you're going. Like, if we're remixing boss fights here, okay. And then create a new, bigger Shigot that's ice-based. It's not a bad idea. Not at all. I'm just thinking about, I'm trying to remember Metroid Prime, and I'm trying to remember just like the enemies throughout the game. So like in the Chozo Ruins, yes, there was poison, but were there like a lot of poison enemies that seemed based off of Flagra? Can't think of it. And then for Thardus, there wasn't like a whole bunch of golems that were kind of hinting at Thardus, right? Now, Omega Pirate, there were some pirates that were pretty big. There's the brutes. So that one was the Omega Pirate was hinted at a little bit. So, I mean, on that note, if they were remastering or remaking Metroid Prime, maybe they include some new enemy types that do kind of build up a little bit more to these bigger boss fights. So, if they do have like a mega Shigoth, there are, I mean, that would already be a build up for there because they already have those. And then yeah, I mean, maybe they could have some golem creatures in the Magmore Caverns. Like they could do that. I'll say though, I love the idea. I mean, Thardus would fit in Magmore Caverns, and I would actually. I don't need it to be like a giant Shigoth. I'd be okay with an entirely unique ice-based boss, like just something that kind of fits. It would be totally different. What I expect is, I think I think you leave Thardus where he's at, and you just give us something for Magmore Caverns. But if you want to, mix it up, that's cool too. I mean, what also be interesting is if they redesign Metroid Prime HD in a way where it's kind of more replayable. So you think about how like Dread's like super replayable. Like, what if they do something where there's like a new game plus where maybe they remix the boss fights to second playthrough, so maybe the boss fights are in different areas. Like maybe Thardus is in Magmore Cavern, so Mega Pirate is in Chozo Ruins, and there's certain elements about the fight that change, and maybe the environment change a little bit too. And that would be like a cool kind of like, it would have like a very like a Master Quest like vibe. That would be kind of fun to see. I don't know if they do that, but that would be a great way to add more content without adding more content. Like just remixing the fights and the areas and some elements to them. That would be cool. Let's see. E-Primify added me. E-Primify. Am I allowed to call Joycey Aunt Joycey here? You're going to have to ask Joycey J. Hello there, Joycey J. It's no worries. I'm glad you're here, though. I hope you enjoyed your nap. D. Fox, hello to you as well. Thank you for modding, guys. I really appreciate it. Nintendo, have you heard the original plans for the Ice Boss in Prime? Thardus was indeed going to be in Magmore, and there would be a massive Tusk boss in Phendrena instead. That might explain why I was very, very okay with Thardus being in Magmore Caverns, because maybe that... I do remember reading something like that. But I don't remember reading the massive Tusk boss. Is there maybe some material that I can look up, that I can kind of read, that we can kind of talk about together. Original Phendrena boss fight. I'm just getting like... Maybe if I search Thardus was supposed to be in Magmore Caverns. Like, Google isn't, you know, some of these Metroid details can't just be found with Google, apparently. According to Sneak, Thardus was intended to be fought in a large lava pit area in the Magmore Caverns, but it was moved to Phendrena due to time constraints. This is supposed to be a dark bonus for his character animation. See below. Okay, maybe this'll... Okay. There's a few different things. Like, there's... Alright. So there's some... I'm just on Wikitroid here, so I'm just gonna look through this real quickly. They're saying some stuff. Okay, so according to Sneak, Thardus is intended to be fought in a large lava pit area in the Magmore Caverns, but was moved to Phendrena due to time constraints. Is supported by Derek Bonikowski. Character animation see below that depicts Thardus with an orange core instead of blue. Okay. Just watching the little video. Cute. I mean, I'm for, like, yeah, I agree. I mean, Thardus makes sense. But what I'm curious on is who is going to be the boss in Magmore Caverns. So that's what I want to know. I mean, like, who is going to be the boss in Phendrena is what I meant to say. Let's see. Because there's something else here about Magmore Caverns. Control F. Okay, I won't control F. Trying to find something. The Magmore Caverns are the only area in Metroid Prime that has no boss. Although Thardus was seemingly intended for this area, but was moved due to time constraints, as revealed by Mike Sneak's interview with Shrine Sparkers. I am not 100% sure, but if I remember correctly, Thardus is supposed to be in a large lava pit arena, but I believe we had to change it due to time constraints. Yeah, I'm just trying to find something about what would have been the boss in Phendrena. That's what I want to find out. I can't find anything. Let's see here. Alrighty. Search She Got Prime. Okay. Or search Sabergoth. Okay. Okay. Alright. Alrighty. Alright. Alright, I found something here. Okay. Sabergoth. The Sabergoth, previously known as the Ice Boss, is an unused boss creature in Metroid Prime. The Sabergoth loosely resembles a furless, blue-skinned primate, with the most distinguished features being its 6 limbs. I mean, there's this picture here. That looks pretty damn cool. So what if they add this boss in the Metroid Prime HD remaster? Like, that would be sick. I would love to see that. Look, actually, they got some more stuff here. Okay, that looks not as cool, but, you know, visuals. There. Man, I guess it has tusks. That's the tusks you're referring to. I'm about it. Surviving material. Greg Luzniak, conceptual art depicts the creature standing several meters taller than Samus and refers to it as the Ice Boss, was modeled and skinned by Mike Sneath.
Okay. Trivia. I'm not going to read the whole thing. The actor of moving this intended boss of the Legend Drift possibly influenced the decision of moving Thardas from its original location, the Magmor Caverns, into the snow area to fill the ape-like creature's spot. Consequently, the Magmor Caverns remain the only main area of the game without a boss. The Ice Titans found in Excelsior and Metroid Prime Federation resemble Shebergoth. It also resembles Bully Monks in Borderlands. Okay. Interesting. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. So... yeah, I mean, that's... so... there's two different like bosses that they were thinking about in Metroid Prime HD that could have been added. Maybe there's more. I should look into that. I mean, if they added both Sabergoth and Metacrade, that would be all. I think I'll be happy with just one of them. I'm not even asking for both, because like there's already a boss for each area, you know. Like there's just not a need. There's not a need. They don't need to do that. Here's another idea for extra Metroid content. Then I want to talk a little bit more about Zelda before we... what time is it? Yeah, we'll go... yeah, we have about half an hour. So... there was an idea for Metroid Prime... that eventually it was kind of canned, but some contents went into Metroid Prime 2. Oh, hi, Ruby. How are you? You want to come up? There you go. There you go. Hi. There you are. Anyway, so yeah, so they had this idea for Metroid Prime 2. Okay. All right. Become problem. There you go. Very good. They had this idea for Metroid Prime 2. And, well, it wasn't going to be Metroid... at first, it wasn't Metroid Prime 2. It was going to be like a Metroid Prime 1.5. And it was going to be like very focused on like horror and psychological elements. And Samus was going to be in like the space station. And there was going to be this AI that was trying to take out Samus. And it was going to have control of the space station and like trap her in different ways and try to gas her out and mess with her mind and just do all these different things to really throw Samus off and terrify her and release different enemies throughout the station. And it had a very dark atmosphere to it, even darker than Metroid Prime. And Prime 2 is darker than Prime 1. It has a darker atmosphere to it. So a lot of that dark to some of those ideas did translate over to Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. But imagine like if they were to kind of go back to that idea, and that was like the additional content they added to Metroid Prime HD. Like, how cool would that be? Keep in mind, I don't expect any... I don't expect new bosses. I don't expect, this Metroid Prime 1.5 to be added. Now, I think there would be a chance to add these things if Metroid Prime 4 was years away. But I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is years away. I think it's relatively soon. Similar to how we got 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and Bowser's Fury was like a really nice... extensive, like, additional segment. They could have done something like that for Metroid Prime HD, but I think Metroid Prime 4 is right around the corner. As opposed to 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, we haven't seen the next Mario yet, and we're still not sure when we're going to get it. Fingers crossed it comes out at the end of this year, but depending on when the next system comes out, that's probably going to dictate when it happens, so maybe later. So I don't expect any of this stuff, but man, how cool would it be if they were to go in that direction, have like a side mode in Metroid Prime HD that's this side adventure, and it's like maybe it's like an epilogue story. You could play how you choose, just like how you have an option to play either Bowser's Fury or that, or like with Future Connected and Xenoblade Chronicles Infinite, like a side game that's like it stands on its own, but it's really cool. Like they could have that, and it would be amazing. It would be amazing to explore another space station. Like, you see, the space frigate. Like, imagine if the space frigate was bigger and it was not destroyed per se, but it was darker and it was more, instead of linear or like a loop. They change it around because you have to kind of circle back. But like, imagine if it was something that was a little bit grander. And like, for example, you see some of those enemies that are stuck behind the doors that are banging, or there's the test tubes, and some of those break out, and then they're just trapped in a room you're gassed in. But there's like this AI that's talking to you throughout, telling you to leave and messing with you, and it's changing the lighting and maybe showing like phantoms with its technology. And sometimes there are crazy enemies that does release on you. Like, that would be so cool. Love it. I would love it, love it, love it. Don't expect it at all, but I would love it. That all said, some of those ideas were incorporated in Metroid Prime 2, and with Prime 4, you know, they can go in some of these directions. They can incorporate some more horror elements and some freaky things like this, and an AI that's messing with you. Like, if you think about it, Metroid Dread does have some of those elements already. Like, Adam wasn't Adam for, we're not entirely sure. Like, we lost Adam's communication for a while, and it turns out that Adam wasn't Adam. I don't want to spoil it entirely, but like, there's definitely some tomfoolery there, some psychological, like, messing with you, and different areas being locked down in Dread. Like, they can, but imagine like if they were to go the extra mile with that in a dedicated like Metroid Prime style game. There's a lot they could do that. It'll be really fun. I see DW for Smash has joined as a member. Welcome to the Legends. Thank you very much for joining, buddy. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you enjoy the content. Super happy for that. Thank you. Nintendo, the supposed story for Metroid Prime 1.5 was also wild, with the horrifying alien species ramming their colossal ship into planets and ridding them of the resources, and Samus has to stop them. Yeah, that was, I guess I'm calling it a space station, but it's like a ship, right? Like, they need to stop that. Ooh, Robert Powell. Imagine Silex hacks into Samus's suit in some way. Doesn't Silex have, like, hacking abilities? Like, Silex could be that character that's messing with you throughout an adventure. Like, Silex you may fight Silex in somewhat of sort of like a dual rival kind of way, like the new replacement for Dark Samus, but also Silex can take on that role of sort of managing things from the background and really messing with your head. And there's this whole other element that we don't entirely understand about Silex. We don't know if Silex is, like, we don't know what his identity is. There's a mystery there, and that mystery could play into the story for Prime 4, and that would be like, there's some potential there. Man, there's some cool stuff that they could really get into. So I'll talk a little bit about Zelda. Feel free to bring up more Metroid ideas. I'll come back to them, but I just want to circle back here because I touched on some things for Zelda, but I want to, you know, keep it up. So let's say, like, most likely I think we're gonna get like a long trailer, and I speculate that they're going to have a few moments where AJ, like, so basically how I envision it, I don't think we're going to have like a 25-minute segment of Tears of the Kingdom, but maybe it's like a 6-ish minute segment. It's like a relatively long segment towards the end. At the end, starts off, they have a trailer. Trailer's like 3.5 minutes, and it's basically the equivalent to the trailer we got back for Breath of the Wild back in January 2017. It's like one of the best trailers ever. We get a lot of story, we get a lot of gameplay. It's all put into a very exciting trailer, so there's still a lot of mystery to it, but we're still asking a lot of questions about what the game is. Then afterwards, AJ Onuma takes a moment to talk about a few things. We see a little bit more gameplay as he talks about a few things they're showcasing in the trailer to highlight them, like the hand. Maybe talks a little briefly about some runes and some of the abilities. Maybe makes a reference to Ganondorf's voice actor or something like that. And then they announce a few amiibo. Maybe they announce a new Link amiibo. So you know that Link statue with his hand and the cape? I could see that becoming a new amiibo. I could definitely see that. I think they could have a Ganondorf amiibo, which would be really cool. And I think they could have maybe a new Zelda amiibo. Like that, so there could be those 3 different amiibo. Or maybe there's a new enemy that's not quite the Guardian, but something else that will be prevalent throughout. That might be a really cool amiibo to see. Like maybe that green statue thing that we saw. There's a whole bunch of options. Maybe there's dragons, and there could be amiibos for that. I'm buying all the amiibo probably. So I don't always buy amiibo, but when it comes to Zelda, I might. Actually, there's a few Metroid amiibos I've been wanting to get too that I've been holding off on. And I've wondered if they would announce a Zelda OLED during the Direct. And I predicted it in my predictions video, but I've gone back and forth on it. Not sure. But also, I think a collector's edition, which I didn't really touch on, could be announced. And the collector's edition, you know, it would be a nice little thing. I guess what would it include? I don't think they do another Master Sword statue, do they? No, they gotta do something different. They can't give us a Sheikah Slate because it's not really gonna be the focus either. I think giving us a green hand would just be kind of morbid. So I don't think they're giving us like a green hand statue. Could be a statue of Link, you know, instead of an amiibo. Or they just don't go in that direction. It doesn't have to be statues. Like not every Zelda collection has to have a statue. It could just be like a nice like collector's box that comes with like an art book. I'll throw an idea out there. As cool as a Zelda OLED would be, you know, be what I want more. I want a Tears of the Kingdom themed Pro controller. That's what I really want. I want a Pro controller that has like this green like hue that's kind of like what we see in the trailer. Like I want to see that. That would be so cool. Like the Pro controller is like somewhat see-through, but I want to see like a little bit of that greenness to it. That would be awesome. I would love to see that. Checking with the chat here. Charles Shadella, about messing with your head. Penumbra Black Plague is intense in that way. Or is it Numbra? I'm not even familiar with that. What that is. Is that it's a game? Okay. Okay. You know it's a game that should be remastered? Eternal Darkness. That game messed with your head. Robert Powell. One thing I want to see in Prime Force is Zero Suit segment. Imagine Silex just completely negates her suit entirely, leaving her fully vulnerable. Ooh. So it would be, maybe it would almost be kind of like adding like a Emmy segment, but instead it's Samus being a super vulnerable segment where she has to be very, you know, she has to be very stealthy and everything's a threat to her, so she has to not get caught. That might be pretty cool. It would probably take away from some of the, unless it was areas. If it would be different if it's areas. If it's areas that you can go into, you can kind of go in and out. I mean, also Metroid doesn't have to be totally open. It can be linear. So, I think there's some potential there. I don't know if they'll do it, but it would, I've definitely speculated before about us seeing Zero Suit Samus in action in a 3D game, which would be fun. And it could be like in third person too, to kind of give you a little bit of a shift between first and third person. Thomas Owen. Yeah, I'm expecting Prime Force story to be top tier. Yeah, I think so too. I think the thing about the Metroid series, especially the Prime series, a lot of the story comes in the background. It's kind of told through the environment. But that's not a bad thing. For me, it's kind of better. It's more about the exploration, discovering what's going on. But I'm also up for some pretty killer cinematic cutscenes. Like I think Dread showed that Metroid can really do a good job of that. Super Chris. Yes, I agree. You should get into playing Metroid. Raw Powell. I think open world could work, but they need to be careful how they approach it. Yeah. that's a whole can of worms, and I'm not even ready to wrap my head around that right now because I'm wrapping up the stream. I mean, I might do it. All right, how would that work? I didn't want to try and wrap my head around open world Metroid, but let's try and let's try. Let's see if we can come up with something. I guess part of the problem is that, all right, you got to think about some of the design philosophies we've seen with some of Nintendo's big games. Like for Breath of the Wild, they went back to the foundation of what Zelda was, and it was about adventure, and there was an openness to it. There's a lack of linearity. And you look at Metroid, there are ways to do things out of order, if I remember correctly, the first Metroid, but it was mostly linear, but it was kind of figuring out where to go. Like, you would still be going back and forth, a lot of backtracking. The world felt very interconnected and linked in a very intelligent way, but there was a general path you were supposed to go, which is kind of back and forth and throughout an environment. So if you make a game like Metroid open world, that might take away from that a bit, you know? Or does it? I'm trying to think how, like, how would they go about doing this? It would require even more intelligent design of how it's all put together. And I guess the weird thing is like, well, I guess, like, what do we even define as open world, right? Because, like, a lot of Metroid is going through, like, corridors and rooms and dark areas where you can't see off into the distance. I think the thing about open world is that you see off into the distance, you can kind of go in any direction you choose. Metroid oftentimes isn't about that. Honestly, I just don't expect it to be open world. I think, you know, when designing Metroid Prime 4, they had the Switch in mind initially. Or maybe they didn't. No, they announced it for Switch, so I think they did. And I think, considering the expected graphical fidelity of the game and just the direction Metroid Prime was in, like, it's already they already have a kind of like a smart design in place to be able to create a pretty beautiful looking world, because it's designed in a way that's contained. Like, the loading is hidden with the blast doors you go through, and you can find yourself in rooms. So to then see, like, open world would be kind of insane. I don't know. I just, like, could they do something? Like, they could, in theory, someday maybe they could, like imagine a game where you can basically take Samus's ship wherever you want. So I don't know how this would work, but all right, hear me out here. Who here's played Starlink? So I'm not even necessarily talking about going from planet to planet in space. I'm just talking about on one planet. I'm thinking about just one planet for now. I'm not thinking about open universe. I don't think that that's what they should do for Metroid. As cool as it would be to explore other planets, they did it in Prime 3. I think ultimately they should just focus on one planet this time around. If they have multiple planets, I mean, we'll see how they do it. But if it's on one planet, in Starlink, you can take your ship and fly around the entire planet, and there are different structures and buildings. You can't enter them. There's a few you can enter, but too much, no, you can't do too much. But if the game was just focused about exploring a singular planet with all of this weird animal life and plants and structures and things like that, and maybe ruins you can get deeper into the planet with, maybe on the surface you could fly around with the ship. But it would be about digging deeper, finding ways deeper, and maybe go to one part and like, oh, I can't do much here, I need to go elsewhere, and maybe elsewhere I can attain the powers that level they'll let me get deeper into this part of the world. And maybe it's about going to different parts of the world and finding ways to get deeper on different parts, finding different keys, ultimately, so you can eventually find yourself in the center of it all, where your goal is, your target is, the very like a deep realm of the planet. And I guess it could work. And maybe like Samus could ride like some different animals. Like if there's a little bit of a focus on like the nature of things, and Samus being kind of like a quiet giant or something like that, where like the animal life will understand she's a peaceful creature that now will harm them. She can use them in like a good, like she can pet something, or she can maybe there's like an alien horse she can ride or something like that. Not all the time, just in moments, which might be kind of weird for Samus, but maybe we're rethinking like what would be a Metroid, right? But there still would have to be like this idea of a lot of an alien world where you're kind of finding yourself going deeper and deeper into this realm. And I mean, it doesn't have to be necessarily down per se, right? Like Metroid Dread, you're technically working your way up, but it's kind of like just kind of digging further. Digging also is going down, but just again, just going further and further into this realm, trying to find your way. And it's kind of like trying to find a way to progress by obtaining power-ups and keys, and it's a huge puzzle. So if they did it, it would still be about trying to find yourself getting further and further in, even if there are different points of interest that are open. You can go to somewhat out of order early on, but ultimately it would be about getting there. I think ultimately I don't think you go in that direction, but that's just me trying to kind of put together how an open world Metroid might work. And I think maybe you don't need to do that, but I do think you could have like really big open sections that give you a great sense of exploration. Like I still think Metroid will satisfy that sense of exploration. It's just not going to be this giant, vast expanse that you go from one point to another in any order you choose. Joy CJ, I want Tears of the Kingdom everything. You're buying everything. Maybe me too. 80 animations. Man, I just want a Tears of the Kingdom story trailer. After that, I'll be good till May. I'll take anything. Anything at this point. Just give me scraps, please. Alright, let's see here. Darth OP. If there were one change I would make to the Omega Pirate, it'd be for him to send help from other elite pirates instead of beam troopers. Ooh, that would be scary. I did like seeing the different elements having to use your different beams, but that would be scary. I'm also, again, I'm not opposed to having to refight some of the major bosses again, but remix in some way. Let's see here. All right. Raw power. I'm pretty sure. I think it's in reference to Zero Suit, right? I was thinking it would still be in first person, but you'll have nothing in the HUD, and you'll just see her hands and paralyze her. Okay. Yeah, I think some people would be upset because they'd want to see Zero Suit Samus, like her whole form, but that would be an interesting play. Mind of Christ. What about a Metroid Prime Pentology release, which would include ports of Federation Force, Hunters redone in HD, both with online play? Just give us everything, right? Just the whole Metroid thing in one package. The star of the show is Metroid Prime HD. They can still play 2 and 3 upscaled, and Hunters and Echoes and Federation Force have like a basic online play that's kind of comparable to what we see with Nintendo Switch Online all together. I'd love it. That'd be amazing. Do I believe that's happening? Not for a second, but man, would that be one heck of a deal. If Trilogy was a good deal, this would be a better deal, and I would pay more than $100 for it. But I don't know how many people would. Joyce J, I'm hoping with Tears of the Kingdom Metroid Prime 4, Nintendo put more thought into the story of their seriously toned games. It doesn't hurt gameplay. It can help. It can help sometimes. Weeb out there. Metroid is way too linear for open world in my opinion. Part of the fun is being limited in where you can go and figuring out how to expand your surroundings. Open world kills that. That is part of the challenge, and that's why I was trying to think about, like, you could have an open world, but if most of the areas are kind of locked, that's tough. Now, maybe they can set it up to where you can get waves of power-ups out of order. Like, maybe there's like 3 different power-ups you can get in a particular order, and they're random, or, you know, you can kind of choose, and then you can use the next wave to get more, and the next wave to get more. Like, they could add some sort of flexibility to the trajectory of how you progress the game, but that would require some serious design expertise and planning and foresight. I think playing Metroid Dread is just incredible. Like, just because Metroid Dread, there are actually some actually designed sequence breaks in there where you can get certain things out of order, for the story and the boss fights and such, and the power-ups. And it's insane that they had that level of foresight and the world is that well crafted. But that's for a 2D map. To design a 3D Metroid Prime game and then make it open world and still find a way to do certain things out of order and still sort of fit the general Metroidvania style, that would, I think that might be too much to expect. I mean, even for the Zelda team, and the Zelda team I consider to be the best of the best. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's a developer out there that you could really reasonably expect for them to pull something like that off. But if they did, I think it'd be kind of like one of the most impressive things ever done. But I guess the other question is it even worth doing? Is that even fun? Having to go from one side of the world to the next only to realize you can't do anything there, so now you gotta go elsewhere. Like, if the idea of open world is kind of being able to do what you want, how you want, and then being locked about it, kind of to Weeb out there's point, they sort of conflict with each other. That's part of the challenge. But I'll go back to what I said before. You can still have large open areas that have exploration. There can still be some things you can do out of order, but a full-on open world, that I'm skeptical of. Spheromancer added me. On the controller topic, I was thinking the biggest thing that says that OLED was fake is that the corrupted Joy-Con was the left one. Then Link's right arm gets corrupted in the game. Interesting. I never thought of the green as the corruption, but it kind of is. A little bit. Yeah, alright. I just think of it as like the Zonai magic. That's what I just thought of the green as, like symbolizing the Zonai magic. But the Zonai magic is on Link's right hand. Nintendo's. I also love the dense, beautiful, intricately placed and modeled rooms and layouts that a more linear design can follow. And I think that's kind of what Metroid should be. Okay, I see what you're saying, Robert Powell. So Robert Powell says, I would think open world where you could still have corridors and such, but you'd be more free to go over walls and have more areas connecting together to make everything very interconnected. And I think they could still do that, where there are certain things you can do out of order. There are maybe multiple ways to progress, but it's still ultimately about kind of building up your abilities and being locked behind certain areas and finding ways to progress. Like, it's a puzzle. It's an ongoing puzzle where when you obtain one power, be like, oh man, I wasn't able to do this before, but maybe now I can. And maybe some of it's not even just powers, but as you learn how to play the game better, you learn how to do different things, and maybe that knowledge in and of itself leads you to go backtrack, and progress in a different way. So, I think there can be some of that in there. Like, I just don't think it would be like this giant map that you can go in any direction, but you know, a little bit more beyond out of the general range from we saw the initial Prime trilogy, I do think is conceivable for sure. Joycey J, could traveling to different worlds in Metroid Prime 4 be a thing? Would it expand the story and gameplay? So Metroid Prime 3 actually had multiple planets and areas you could explore. You could get into your spaceship and pick another area to go to. There would be a little quick cutscene where you would fly off and you would go to another area. And it was cool because it was something we wanted to see. We were kind of asking for as fans, and they finally gave it to us in 3. But in practice, I don't think it made that much of a difference. It offered some additional story context for certain areas, I guess. But I guess, you know, having to just pick where you want to fly on a map to go to a different area is not the same as, like, finding things that sort of naturally progress into each other and then finding different ways into different areas. Having, like, that connected labyrinth where there's secret entrances and pathways that all link together, that's kind of really fun. Now, say in Prime 3, there were some areas that you could find that were like, whoa, how did I even get here? And how did this link to this area? Like, they still had that, but I think the different planets thing takes away from that a little bit. You know, when I was younger, I think the more obvious exciting thing is, yeah, more planets, bigger, open world. Let's all go, like, do that. And those things are exciting, even now. But I think when it comes to Metroid Prime 4, maybe just focus on one area. And that's it. I mean, I don't know. They could mix it up a little bit, and maybe they start off elsewhere and it leads to there. And maybe there is some traversal. You can go to other areas. I don't know. I'll say that I would think it'd be cool if maybe there are different planets. Like, if they did do different planets, I would think it'd be cool if you could actually control the flight, and basically, instead of exploring one planet, it's more about exploring a solar system, and you're trying to find something in the solar system, and that's what it's all about. That would be cool. And maybe that's how they could do, like, an open world Metroid, where the space itself is like a vast area that you can kind of explore, but you have to find ways to enter different planets and dig deeper into each of them, and you obtain different power-ups in them that allow you to progress in the different planets, going back and forth between them, ultimately getting different keys or clues that lead you to where you need to go in the solar system to find the big threat that you're aiming for. Like, that might be one way to handle, like, a semi-open world Metroid game, but I think it's probably just best that they focus on one planet for the most part. I'm seeing the preview, and I'm just seeing my hand just waving around like crazy. I'm like, what was I doing? Am I, like, casting a spell? Samvi, yeah, Hunters Online was pretty epic. I would like to see some sort of return to that at some point. Spheromancer. Also, did you see the Tears of the Kingdom Advance Wars NSEU IDs were both updated today? As if there was any doubt, Direct definitely soon, probably updated for pre-orders. Yeah. I think we're definitely close. Darth OP, if you want to challenge hardcore challenging mix of stuff, I challenge you do a let's play of the Metroid Prime Hacks mod, Metroid Prime Double Trouble, and Metroid Prime 2 Echoes Double Trouble. I don't know if I have time, but I'll maybe someday, but definitely not anytime soon. I got too much going on right now. I do enjoy challenging games, though. Don't get me wrong. Nintendo. Games like Super Metroid and Hollow Knight feel really open, even though games were still fundamentally linear. The way you backtrack and find items is what makes the games feel more open. Yeah. You can. I think the game can still feel very open and feel like a vast adventure. Like, I don't want that point to be lost. Like, I think Metroid's still gonna feel like a vast adventure. But the underlying gameplay structure will be mostly linear, I believe. Devin Line. Zelda is love. Metroid is life. Robert Powell. I mean, Metroidvania is pretty much an open world in a 2D plane. I guess it depends on how you look at open world. If you see open world as just like a vast world that you can explore in multiple directions, kinda, yeah. And I think Metroid is going to be a vast world that you can explore and can expand in multiple directions. But in terms of progressing the game and getting towards the end and completion, you're not going to be able to do anything in any random order. There's going to be things you need to do in a particular set order. And part of the Metroid gameplay, the Metroid hook, is obtaining power-ups as you find ways to progress. It's like, oh, you fight a boss. Oh man, now I can melt ice. Okay, oh, I can melt ice. I remember that frozen wall from before. Maybe I should go back there. Where is that going to take me? You melt down the ice. You find yourself down a different pathway, and then this different pathway, maybe it branches off a little bit. Like, oh, there's two different things I can do. Okay, and you can do those in any sort of order, but they ultimately lead to like the wave beam, and the wave beam has electricity. And like, oh, well, I remember that power station I passed by that had no electricity. Maybe I could go back there, and I can power it up. And then you do. Then you see another ice wall. You melt it down. Then you find another boss, and then you find like it kind of like that's kind of like the Metroidvania style gameplay where you have these aha moments as you progress. You obtain a power up. You remember something you passed before you couldn't do much with that you explored, and it kind of builds on that. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna be closing things out here in about a couple minutes, and then call it a night. Any final questions? Any video topics or ideas you want to address or anything? Last couple minutes. I'll take a couple more. Meanwhile, I will end the poll. Yes, Taylor, this is live. I am speaking to you live right now. Here we go. So the poll is at 111 votes. I'm ending it. $111 votes. Who here will buy a big boy remaster for Metroid Prime HD if it's announced soon? And 72% said yes. How about that? The 8% of you, that's okay. Not everyone has to play the same thing. I am very excited for Tears of the Kingdom, Taylor. I think it's going to be amazing. Robert Powell, 27% uncultured. Hey, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Maybe they can't afford it. Or maybe they already play Metroid Prime, they don't need an HD remaster. Maybe they only care about Zelda. Or maybe they just like being contrarians. Nintendo, when you're getting Doug Bowser on the show, Andres? Probably right after I get Reggie on the show. I saw that Devin Lyons is also asking me to get Reggie on the show. I don't do a great job of inviting guests. I should try and do better. I understand that. Getting Doug Bowser, though, man, that would be one heck of a steal. By the way, for those who didn't know, I have been doing the Nintendo Prime podcast on Wednesday nights. I've been guesting on there consistently. I probably will be continuing for a little while, most of the time. And yesterday, we actually had an early day stream, and we did it with Kid and Krista, and also Captain Bergerson, Daniel. He has his own Zelda channel, too. And we all came together along with Nate's co-host, Eric, and all 6 of us. We just talked about Nintendo. So check it out. I think it's pretty cool. But yeah. Locke, when do you bring Samus on the show? Samus is right here. Samus is just not much of a talker, apparently. Also, apparently Samus is only 3 feet tall. Go figure. Nintendo, to get Silex on here. Man, Silex would be crazy. AB James. Super Metal Dave would be a cool guest. Yeah, I've actually, a couple times have had discussions with Dave before. One on Rob's channel, Rule of Two Review, and also on Nintendo Prime's channel as well. I've had been in 2 different discussions with him, but we haven't been on each other's channels yet. But I think, yeah, at some point we could get around to doing that. I should ask him. It was cool talking to Kit and Krista, Devin. It was nice hearing their perspective, because they actually worked at Nintendo. They can get a little bit of a little bit more better understanding of the pulse of Nintendo and how their marketing works a bit. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like hearing Kit's perspective on Breath of the Wild and the transition to Tears of the Kingdom, and how he actually doesn't expect that we'll get as much information on Tears of the Kingdom because compared to Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild was a new thing, new gameplay style, new revolution for the Zelda series, and it was alongside the Switch as well, the new generation. There was more reason to kind of really tell us a lot about that, and also this is my own thing, but that I've thought about. But like back then, they needed to tell us as much as we could because all we had to get excited about was Zelda, because it was the Wii U era, it was the Dark Ages. So, but anyways, with all that in mind, it does kind of somewhat explain why Nintendo's been so quiet about Tears of the Kingdom. That all said, I still think it's odd that Tears of the Kingdom is where they've been so quiet about it even still. Because you look at something like, say, for example, Fire Emblem Engage. First off, they didn't announce that for a long time, right? But it was ready for a long time. They announced it randomly. Well, not randomly, but they announced it in the September Nintendo Direct. And the one, just a few months ago, it comes out in January. Like a 4-month announcement to release window. And there's so much information that was delivered in this 4 months. Now, in fairness to Tears of the Kingdom, we've had multiple trailers come out over the course of like 2.5 years or something. But we're like 3 months away, and the amount of information we know about Tears of the Kingdom is less than the amount of information we knew about Xenoblade 3 months before its release. Like compared to Fire Emblem, we knew more about Fire Emblem before its release. Same thing with Splatoon. So I still think it's strange that they're being this quiet, but also I think timing wise, they're just gonna really give it to us all in February. And I think it's going to be epic. I still think it's strange that the game's coming out May. I really wonder why, but maybe that's just when they thought they were ready and they would make sense. Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyways, it was definitely cool having a discussion with them. They're fun people. Raw power. Sometimes Nintendo has a habit of just barfing information way more than we need. Like, they're quiet for years, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's everything. Like, yeah. And Nintendo's been very cautious this generation, I feel, and not giving us... Like, they're giving us enough, but they're not giving us too much. Like, I think they've been very well planned and spaced out the last 3 years. Yeah, like about the last 3 years, they've been very careful about their information, giving us just enough, not too much, not too little, just enough. It's kind of like why each direct has felt maybe mid, as the young kids say nowadays, because they only tell us what we need to know. They don't really go much beyond that. Like they'll tease a few things to keep the discussion going, keep us excited for the future. But for the most part, it's pretty much just focused on what's coming the next 3 to 4 months. And then once the next 3 to 4, and then after that, the next direct, and then next 3 to 4 months to the next direct. That's kind of how they've been doing it. Kick it smooth. You remember when they spoiled every dungeon in Skyward Sword? I also don't like that. I do not like it when they tell us everything in a game or show us snippets of everything in a game. Do not like that at all. I want there to be surprises, and more surprises than not. Raw Power, even Dread revealed a bit too much before release. I loved talking about the game every week, but I understand your point. I did feel like we kind of saw most of the power-ups and most of the fights before the game came out. That said, it didn't really ruin my overall enjoyment of the game. The game was still stellar, but that was a thought I had as well. I'm gonna read this and then call it a night. Harley Sonder. What Kid had to say completely mirrored my guesses around Tears of the Kingdom. I agree Breath of the Wild got extra special treatment as it was completely new and selling a console, and Tears of the Kingdom will be amazing, but it is unlikely that it'll be quite as amazing as Breath of the Wild, just because Tears of the Kingdom probably won't reinvent the wheel in the same way. Okay, so you feel that Tears of the Kingdom will also sort of suffer from sequelitis. They're gonna do so much to that game, but to your point, like I get it, and there's definitely been a conversation point, and I see the point, and I agree that Tears of the Kingdom probably is not going to sell as much as Breath of the Wild. Probably not. I think it's going to be the second best-selling Zelda game of all time. But I always hope, I'm always rooting for the Zelda team. I'm always rooting for Nintendo to outdo expectation, And they've put so much time into Tears of the Kingdom. They've had such an incredible foundation. I think they will objectively make a better game, but the wow factor, that may not be there as much. But I don't know because I think they're trying to come up with some pretty cool ideas, and if they can come up with as many fresh new ideas as they did with Breath of the Wild, maybe in some ways it might be more impressive. Maybe the breadth of the world, like the size and vastness of the world, and how high you can go, and how far you can go, and how deep you can go, and how you go about going from these different places with your different abilities, and how the physics stack upon each other with the different options. Basically what was done in Breath of the Wild, but to a vaster degree. Like, I think I'm open to them still kind of completely blowing my mind. But I'm a Zelda fan, right? So I think there's an incredible chance that Tears of the Kingdom, for the core Zelda fan base, may feel like the best game ever, and it won't really suffer from the sequelitis for the core Zelda fan base. But I still agree that probably they will not excite the masses as much as with Breath of the Wild. I still think it's going to be an amazing game that's going to sell really well, but it's definitely an uphill battle. Like that I have to agree with. Yes, the launch sales kick us with. I do agree. Will probably be better because there's a lot more people who have a Switch now. But on that note, for a lot of people who got Switches, Breath of the Wild was not as relevant when they bought it. So maybe with so many more Switches out now, and if Tears of the Kingdom has some cool mechanics and concepts that really surprise us, I think it does have a chance. And if they have like a DLC that has an expansion story with improved visuals for Nintendo's next system next year, and that gives it another big boost, and it's like the premier Zelda title for that system for years, I think there's a chance, but definitely not all. It's more likely that Breath of the Wild remains the top selling Zelda game for a long time. Harley, I'm hoping for a 12 out of 10. Alright, guys. I'm calling it a night. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Super appreciated. If you're new here, please subscribe. I make Nintendo content every day, sometimes more than once a day. We'll have a video and a stream sometimes. And please leave a like. It helps out the stream as well. Others will see it. Other people will watch it. Super appreciated. But yes, thank you all. We'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye.